Okay, here's a very early look at reaction and reviews to Star Trek Picard, which was released last night on CBS All Access. It has a 90% on the tomato meter and a 74% on the audience score. Very small number of audience ratings, user ratings at 42, and 90% on the tomato meter. That's with only 29 critic ratings. Now, I expect those numbers to increase, of course. Probably the bulk of people have not even seen this yet. I haven't seen a lot of marketing on this, so I can guess that a lot of people out in the general public aren't even aware that this has been released at this time. So we'll see these numbers go up. I don't know what the viewership is of CBS All Access. I don't know, just how many people we're talking about and how quickly they're going to jump on Picard. But we're undoubtedly going to see these numbers change. Now, because of all the weird stuff going on with Rotten Tomatoes about, for example, I've highlighted this on Doctor Who season 12 that for some reason user ratings are being removed and then replaced and then removed and then replaced on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's unclear who's doing this or why. There's a lot of speculation and conspiracy theory out there about it. Well, in regards to Doctor Who season 12, most of the theory is that it's an attempt to try to improve the audience review score by repeatedly deleting or removing audience reviews somehow by pruning them away in large batches. But it's completely obvious what is happening there. So that's why I want to take a really early look at Picard, because it'll be interesting to see how this fares, if anything strange happens with the number of audience reviews, or if this number fluctuates in any kind of strange way that's might be worth having a record of for the future. So let's jump right into audience reviews on Star Trek Picard Season 1, and I'm going to entertain all level of star reviews because there aren't that many, and this is not an episode of Rotten Reviews at this point. I have heard that this is good, and I have heard that this is bad, and I think it largely depends on what you think that you should get out of a new Star Trek series. We've got all types of groups online and even on YouTube. Some people say that Picard is not what they expect to see, and they hate it, and they don't even need to watch it. They just outright hate it. And they are bringing up cast and crew interviews that bolsters their opinion that it doesn't match what they want to see, and they're not even willing to entertain this to try to give it a chance. And then there are a lot of people giving it a chance. They're very eager to watch this for themselves, and they are going to be very vocal on whether they like it or not. But I just want to put this on the record to see, how this is going to change over time if it does. And so I'm entertaining all reviews, 5-star and whatnot, and we're probably going to see all the types of these people here. Personally, I haven't seen Star Trek Picard. I'm not a subscriber to CBS All Access. The jury's out for me. I couldn't tell you. I'm a long time Star Trek fan, going back to the original show from the late 60s. I grew up watching that as a kid, and I can't give you my opinion on this right now, but I'm going to give you a whole lot of other people's opinions. So let's start right off. 5-star review from 5 minutes ago. Chock full of nostalgia, Star Trek Picard series premiere was everything we expected it to be, yet brings fresh new ideas, technology, and characters to the table, along with some surprises and plot twists. While the pacing is slow and takes some getting used to, probably because we're in a rush to relive the TNG era, I suspect the action will pick up swiftly with Picard's younger crew. Looking forward to the journey back. Well, just as an aside, a lot of people have said that they believe this will be some kind of deconstruction of what Star Trek The Next Generation did back in the 90s. I'll have to say that, yeah, it seems like that's what's attempted here. That's what that's what Patrick Stewart wants to see. He wants like some modern deconstruction of Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, I don't know if that's what's going to come across to me when I watch this, but yeah, you've got two camps here. You've got people that want to see what was done in The Next Generation, and they want to see that done again in a modern way with, I presume, a bigger budget and better special effects. And then we have another group out there that wants to see a straight-up deconstruction of The Next Generation. Yeah, your mileage is going to vary based on which one of those you're expecting and what you're going to put up with. So 4.5 stars. Only watched first episode so far. Will come back and edit this at the end of the season if my score changes. If you are a Next Generation fan, I think this TV show will be magical to you. Ignore most of the negative reviews on here. You can tell from their wording they didn't watch it or have never watched any Star Trek ever. And that's the thing about Star Trek fans. It's similar to Star Wars fans and Doctor Who fans. They're not only wanting to give you their opinion on what they thought, but they also want to give you their opinion on what other critics have thought and whether they agree with them. And you could say they're trying to pick a fight. They might say they're not. They might say, no, no, I just wanted to tell you that I think you should ignore all the haters. But no, come on, they want to pick a fight. And the supposed haters of the material, they want to pick a fight too. But they are all fans, so I'm sure we're going to see more of this dynamic going on in these reviews. 4 stars. While this is not perfect, some of the elements meant to push the plot forward seem to be a bit rushed and come a little too easily. It is definitely worth watching. Patrick Stewart still shines as Captain Picard. Okay, 3.5 stars. This is not the Next Generation, nor is our captain the same man we remember. Neither of those are bad things. Well, yeah, Patrick Stewart's a lot older. So, of course, it's not going to be exactly the same. Now, how his age is going to factor into this, is it going to be a positive or a negative? Well, this reviewer is saying that I guess it's mostly a positive. 5 stars. It's so great to see Patrick Stewart back as Picard, as well as allowing him to play with new aspects of the character while retaining that core. The effects are stunning, very high quality, and it almost feels like a movie. It feels like Star Trek that I used to watch as a kid, but with a new, proper outlook, as opposed to the somewhat hokey morality plays of TNG, which were done far better in DS9. If you want Picard pontificating on right and wrong and every issue being wrapped up in the last 10 minutes, yeah, so this is a reviewer that really likes it, and he's of the camp, he or she is of the camp that they want to see kind of a deconstruction of what was done in the Next Generation. That's my take on this. Okay, so that could be good or bad. Not saying it's either, but they like that they're thinking that's what's happening here. Yes, the Next Generation was very much, it had a lot of morality play issues or episodes, and so did Deep Space Nine. Personally, I prefer Deep Space Nine for a lot of different reasons, but this reviewer is saying to me, in my opinion, he's saying that he likes that they kind of did a deconstruction on this. So let's move on. 0.5 star, 1 hour ago. Worse than Discovery, Kurtzman's goal to destroy Star Trek is complete. And here is one reviewer from the opposite camp that realizes that this is an attempt to deconstruct Star Trek The Next Generation, and he or she does not like it whatsoever. I'm guessing it's a he because it says Rob. But yeah, so we're going to see these two dynamics here. 4.5 stars, 1 hour ago. Beautifully shot, deliberately paced, brilliantly performed. You know, I'll notice nobody's commented on the plot yet. I have heard people on YouTube videos, giving their reactions that they thought there were major plot holes in the writing compared to previous material from Star Trek, like back in the 90s, for example. But we haven't seen that yet, so that's interesting. 5 stars, a refreshing return to the heart of modern Star Trek. 5 stars, another intriguing series, may be limited in fan scope to the TNG faithful, but overall a good start. Okay, 3 stars, the future isn't what it used to be. Yeah, that's a very short and succinct review, but I'm not left with an answer on which camp they fall into. It could be either one. 5 stars. Loved seeing old characters brought back to life with a fresh take on what's going on in Picard's life. So far, great acting and an intriguing plot. Looking forward to the rest of the series. And then Half a star from 9 hours ago. If you're expecting to watch a Star Trek show, look elsewhere. The Picard premiere was full of lazy writing and tired tropes. Picard has continued the trend of gutting the very heart of what Star Trek is or was. Again, somebody that's not appreciating the deconstructing efforts of the writers, of Kurtzman, of whoever in this version of Star Trek. So, yeah, it's getting interesting now. It's getting a little heated. 1.5 stars from 9 hours ago. Well, there is so much that takes you out of suspending disbelief. And then Picard just has the right dreams to move the plot forward. Is he a mystic? Really lazy writing. Spoilers for episode 1 that make me go, what the fuck? A shipyard that builds 10,000 container ships for Romulan evacuation destroyed all in one go by the synthetics revolution on Mars. Building all 10,000 in parallel, absurd. The Romulan Empire could not have done the same, and they have their own ships anyway. Well, yeah, finally somebody brings up some plot holes. Yes, from what I've heard, the whole thing from Star Trek 2009, that's what really kicks this off. In the plot in which J.J. Abrams' Star Trek from the movie from 2009, the whole thing hinges on the idea that a star went supernova and it wiped out the homeworld of Romulus. And then this continues on from that event. And Starfleet, I guess, has to make the decision to try to rescue Romulans, to evacuate them. But there is a plot problem there because remember, it's the Romulan Empire. It's not just like one planet or two planets and that's all of Romulan society. No, it's actually the Romulan Star Empire. That's what it has been from the beginning when it first showed up in the original series of Star Trek in the late 60s. But all of a sudden, you would think the Star Empire, why didn't they have the means to evacuate themselves to their other, what would have to be many, many worlds in their Star Empire? Why did they need the Federation to come along and to try to evacuate them? It's also a big problem with the 2009 film, and it just takes that big problem and moves it on into Star Trek Picard. It is a big problem for me because I really enjoyed the 2009 film, but I realized right away, hey, there's a big plot hole problem here from the very beginning of this thing. Well, apparently this kind of goes along and just embraces that problem, and this reviewer is kind of talking about that and some other problems, but let's move on. 5 stars. Great premiere, can't wait to see where it goes. 5 stars, amazing. A great peek in at the life of one of our favorite captains that maintains the core of who he was when we last saw him 20 years earlier. Still hopeful, willing to help anyone, particularly the crew he sees as family, but also acknowledges that time has passed. He's 94 years old, he's long retired. So they're commenting on his age. I guess in this he also appears as a 94-year-old with all that comes with that. So, okay, at least they're accurate to that. They're not trying to make him, animate him into some type of young action hero. Again, you could maybe see that as a plot problem. I mean, you would think that in the 24th or 25th century, that we've mitigated aging's effects a lot more. I mean, we have already done so in modern day in 2020. We are certainly far more advanced than we were even 50 years ago on solving a lot of the issues that come along with aging. So you would think that centuries from now we'd be a lot even further ahead on this. So that's kind of a plot problem too, isn't it? I mean, why... of all the technology we're shown, almost magic-like technology of Star Trek, they couldn't fix aging at all for humans. Isn't that kind of odd, considering that you find a lot of races out there in the world of Star Trek, in the universe of Star Trek, that have solved these problems, that would have a lot of information that we would have learned from on how to either mitigate, if not outright reverse the effects of aging. It is kind of a big problem in Star Trek, and it's not just a big problem here, of course. It's a big problem going all the way back to The Next Generation and Voyager and Deep Space Nine, because it's a topic that's just not touched upon. It's just ignored. And maybe now that we have Patrick Stewart, who's a lot older, and we have a Star Trek Captain Picard, who's a lot older, maybe it's an opportunity to touch upon that and explain why this wouldn't have been mitigated more in the 24th and 25th centuries. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Let's move on. 1.5 stars. Well, it's certainly not Star Trek in any way, shape, or form, but as generic, poorly written, just about watchable sci-fi, it has some promise. It's very slow, has far too much exposition. Stewart's not playing Picard, more like Charles Xavier. He's chewing the scenery a little bit too much acting-wise. I felt like I was watching a 10th sequel X-Men movie. The bits without Dodge in aren't bad, but the whole thing goes down the toilet when she turns up. Picard's Romulan house staff are just humans with pointy ears. Yeah, it looks like somebody's not really convinced in this review, and he's talking about, well, the character of Picard doesn't feel authentic to him versus what he saw in The Next Generation. Yes, it's the same actor, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like a natural evolution to him. So that's a fair criticism. They're talking about this character Dodge, and I know from what people have told me of the plot that this is some kind of I don't know, clone of Data or something mixed with human. It's very strange. I guess it's just like it could be a super powerful female character that could be a Mary Sue, and I've heard that debate out there already. And I'm reserving my judgment because I haven't seen this, but I'm seeing that come up a lot. That there's a lot of problems with this Dodge character, not only technologically, plot hole wise, but it could be, another attempt to put like, I don't know, feminist intersectional politics into this. I don't know one way or the other. I'm waiting until I see this to make a judgment on that. 5 stars. Some might dislike the darker tone, but Star Trek has always been about interrogating our current state and applying aspirational values to that milieu. The changes in the world of Star Trek mirror our own. The 90s were a time of naive optimism and earnest social progress. Contrast that with today, and you see the rise of nationalistic fascism across the world. Picard is the perfect character to embody this existential crisis. I feel as he does, but there's hope. It's such a threat to see. Well, here come the politics, because I'll kind of disagree. The 90s were a time of naive optimism. No, I'm sorry. I was in my 20s. I was there to pay attention to what was going on. I don't remember any naive optimism. Yeah, maybe in Star Trek, yes. Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. These were very hopeful, very optimistic things. Deep Space Nine, as dark as it got, it was still very much optimistic. That's the feeling I got at the time. Now, saying that the 90s themselves were an optimistic, naively optimistic time, I'm sorry, they weren't. We still had Rush Limbaugh on the radio. We still had people calling people all kinds of political names. We still had Bill Clinton impeached for Monica's dress and etc. So I don't know. I guess you missed out on all that stuff, but no, I don't recall it being naively optimistic at all, so that's just a false comparison. But now you see how this reviewer is bringing a political angle into it already. Now they're saying that today we have the rise of nationalistic fascism across the world. No, that type of stuff has been with us for centuries. We've called it different things. It comes and it comes and goes in American audiences' attention span, right? But it's always been there. It's obvious, like it's very similar. What I'm reading in this review is very similar to the reviews or the interviews I've seen done with Patrick Stewart lately, where he's trying to bring this into the show too. I'm sorry, let's move on. 4.5 stars. Patrick Stewart's post-Starfleet Picard is aged, bitter, disillusioned, and resigned to be a footnote in late 24th century Federation history, living out the rest of his life on his family's vineyard. Decades have passed, and his faith in the institutions he used to represent have wavered due to a policy that stood to put pragmatism over compassion. It's at this point in his life that a visitor comes to his vineyard seeking his help, drawn to him by some unknown instinct. Okay, so they're putting a political angle on it too a little bit. They're saying that Picard has become an aged, bitter, disillusioned, and I guess he's not really agreeing with what has gone on in the world. And this would fit with what Patrick Stewart has said, where he's talking about Brexit and Trump and etc. And Okay, we can go down that road, but obviously this reviewer finds that fascinating and he agrees with all of it, and so we're at 4.5 stars. Okay, 5 stars, great new addition to the Star Trek universe. It could be. I'm not saying it's not, but I already see the politics coming into these reviews. It's interesting. 0.5 star, 10 hours ago. I really wanted to give this a chance. I love Star Trek, I always have, but this is not Star Trek. This is a melodramatic dystopian soap opera that is appropriating the name Star Trek. No disrespect to the acting ability of Sir Patrick Stewart, but my love for Picard is not enough to make me ignore the horrible direction in which they are taking Trek. Star Trek is meant to be a utopian future where we've moved past our shortcomings as a race to face new adversity, not being mired in the past. Okay, so they're saying they preferred the optimistic, maybe even naive optimism of the 90s Star Trek material, and they're really turned off by this darker dystopian, I guess, deconstruction of that. So, okay. But again, we see the political camps here. 5 stars, 10 hours ago. This note reflects what I feel about the show so far and might change with the next episodes, but for now, amazing. Looks great. Finally, Star Trek is back. Okay. 5 stars, a great setup that actually answered more questions than I thought it would. 0.5 star, yikes, this show doesn't feel like Star Trek. I did not like the whole story with Dodge. She is OP, overpowered, and her lines are quite cringe. I also feel like this show don't focus on Picard, but rather Dodge, who I do not like. So they're talking about this female character who's very much highly physically overpowered, according to everything I've read about her. She's like an offspring of Data, so to speak, like she's got a positronic brain inside a human body of some type, and she can leap through the air with almost superhero type powers. And I haven't seen it myself, so I can't say if this is believable or not. It could be, I don't know, but obviously she's like a main focus of this, and that's what we're seeing this reviewer critique, that they really don't like that. So let's move on. 3.5 stars. First was better than I expected, so I have to give it that. I must say it felt nice having a look at civilian life in the future. Also, that interview scene was nice, a little clumsy as it's just an exposition dump they weren't able to do through dialogue or action, but as to what's been said, that felt very in character for Picard and was well delivered by Stewart. As for the story so far, I'm kind of tired of this Starfleet turning evil and going rogue thing, so that might become boring fast. Okay, so they're saying, yeah, it looks like it's a deconstruction of what we knew in the Next Generation. I'm not going to say that's good or bad. I think that could be fascinating. It could be fascinating to turn Star Trek on its head and have, the Federation be evil. But, how they do that, the devil's in the details. Is that going to work, or is it going to be rotten? We're going to find out, I'm sure. 0.5 star, 11 hours ago. To say this show is bad is to really understate how bad the show is. To say it continued the rape of Star Trek is to undervalue how badly they fucked this up. It proves nothing more than a fundamental misunderstanding of Star Trek in an attempt to make it something it is not. These writers and producers broke Star Trek. It's time for them to go. They cannot fix what they broke. This does not even deserve the 0.5 star I'm giving it. Okay. 5 stars. This production looks good and sounds amazing in ways the Next Generation simply could not for its time. Additionally, it is a wonderful continuation of Jean-Luc Picard's story that in the first episode alone demonstrates that Picard is unwilling to betray his own moral principles, even if it means living in a life of isolation and depression. Picard does an amazing job of giving Patrick Stewart the same kind of latitude to explore the character and make the same powerful Picard-esque soliloquies. Okay, so this person saying it's 5 stars. Isn't it interesting to see 0.5 stars right next to 5 stars? It's reminding me of like we're looking at reviews on Star Wars Episode 8 or Episode 9. It's bringing back traumatic memories of those rotten reviews, if you will, but let's move on. 5 stars, 11 hours ago. Completely lived up to the hype. Man, I absolutely loved it. Can't wait for the rest. Okay, 2.5 stars. Marvel type show set in a kinda Star Trek universe. Okay for what it is, but nowhere near a Trekkie program. Well, I've seen that criticism before. You know, a lot of people are saying that Star Trek was never an action adventure with crazy effects and all these explosions and stuff going on. And I saw that criticism a lot with in regards to Star Trek Discovery, also on CBS All Access for 2 seasons. Yeah, Star Trek really wasn't all of that. There were some like warfare type episodes in Deep Space Nine that had a lot of effects for the time and had high budget put into them. But yeah, nothing like what we saw in Star Trek Discovery. And I guess if they're going to continue that in Picard, then it does not match what Star Trek was. Star Trek was a very much cerebral, putting a lot of thought into things type of show that was very sparse on the action and the effects, and tried to use them, those sparse budgeted effects, for great effect. But yeah, Star Trek Discovery certainly was just a whole lot of visual spectacle, something more like what you would expect from J.J. Abrams, for example. And yeah, some people, they're just not going to go along with that because it just feels more like a Marvel movie than Star Trek. And I can kind of sympathize with that because I grew up with the Star Trek from the very beginning in the late 60s. And yeah, it was just the action. I mean, there was some, you know, Western type bar brawl type scenes, because it very much was a product of a time when Westerns were a thing on TV, and carried over some of that in that type of action, fight scenes and whatnot. But as far as big spectacles with ships firing all these weapons at each other in space, that was never a big thing in Star Trek. It really wasn't. So, you know, a lot of people are going to find that off-putting, the older generation that grew up with a different type of Star Trek. 12 hours ago, 5 stars. Excellent, going straight to the essence of what the Star Trek universe is about. Cannot wait to see how the season develops. Well paced and well acted. Okay, well, that looks like we've reached the end of those because on Rotten Tomatoes we only had 42 so far. This just came out last night on CBS All Access, and there still aren't that many reviews even out on YouTube. People that would be reviewing this, they just haven't gotten around to it yet. I mean, they haven't had the chance. But that's why I already have, you know, IMDB queued up because, like I've said before, IMDB, for whatever reason, it has a whole lot more traffic on there, for better or worse, and so it's a great fallback, even though in regards to movies, there's no verification system. Well, in regards to TV shows, it doesn't matter because Rotten Tomatoes has no verification system on TV shows, so all things being equal, just IMDb has a higher volume of traffic of ratings to look at. And so on Star Trek Picard IMDb, it has an 8.3 out of 10. You've probably already noticed the graphics behind me, and 1,123 reviews when I last refreshed this. Now let's take a look at some of those audience reviews. I can click down on, let's see, well, here's the first one. The first one that comes up says, a good start. Okay, so it's not standard Star Trek, but times have moved on, and 26 episode seasons just do not cut it. With that said, it doesn't look like it's going to be Star Trek Discovery. Great. Okay, so this person didn't like Discovery, but they liked this a lot more. Okay. Slow burn, but I think necessary. It's 20 plus years since Nemesis. I would feel cheated if they jumped straight in. There's some answers early and some more questions, always good. I have read 2 of 3 comics, Countdown, and they help a little. Well, yeah, they've released like 3 comics to kind of be supplemental material to tell you what happened between Star Trek Nemesis, the movie, and this show. And I don't know anything about those comics. I know they're called Countdown, and I guess this is becoming a thing, I guess, more and more with these fan-based franchises where even in Star Wars, they're now expecting you to consume material outside of the movies and the TV shows to fill in what would otherwise be known as plot holes and things that aren't explained. Personally, I don't like this. I think that people watching a TV show or a movie shouldn't have to read comics, novels, or see other things in other formats just to understand what's going on their screen when they watch the show. It doesn't seem right. I mean, we've been through decades and decades of all types of material where you can take 2 hours, you can take 90 minutes, hell, you can take 3 hours to explain what's going on in a movie and do it just fine within that time span, that running time. You shouldn't need all this supplemental material to understand what's going on. Look at Avengers. You know, the Avengers movies, you can like them or not, but as far as Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, Avengers Endgame was 3 hours long. It was able to explain everything that was going on without you having to read a bunch of comic books between Infinity War and Endgame. And you could even do this in 90 minutes, and TV shows have been doing this for a long time. Yes, you can say the streaming services, they don't want to put out 20 episodes, they only want to put out 8 or 10 or 12. Okay, fine, but you should still be able to explain what's going on without huge exposition dumps where people are like talking to each other and telling themselves, you know, characters are telling each other things that they should already know just to fill in the audience with information. That's not necessary. That's a problem, a failure with the writing. The writers just aren't up to par because movies and TV shows haven't needed all this extra material before. So I'm in the camp that I think that's bad, that you need this supplemental material. It doesn't matter if Countdown is good or bad. I just don't think it should be required. And, that's being brought up in this review. That's why I'm bringing it up. But let's continue. I think there will be enough fan service to keep most people happy without being over the top. One episode down, and even without the pedigree of the next generation, I would say it's off to a good start. But knowing John Lucas there and former friends will drop in makes me want every episode now. Solid 8 out of 10 for first episode. Will update accordingly. Well, there's somebody that has given this the benefit of the doubt, and they're saying that they're not sure where the rest of it's going to go, but they give this 8 out of 10. It sounds like a very real review to me. It doesn't sound like, any of the conspiracy theorists that are saying that the company is putting fake reviews. No, that sounds completely real to me. Now, let's see if I can actually click on all audience reviews somewhere here. Okay, user reviews. 9 out of 10 on the first one. Picard is back. I had the opportunity to watch the first 3 episodes tonight at the premiere in Berlin. Just one word, great. Yeah, I noticed that some people got to see all, the first 3 episodes, and I guess in some places 3 episodes were being released to be reviewed and commented upon. In certain places in the United States on CBS All Access, these are just going to come out one per week. People here have just seen one, but I am seeing people online, critics mostly, that have said they've seen the first 3. And so we're going to see that in the reviews. 10 out of 10, Picard is back. That's 2 different reviewers saying Picard is back. Okay, that's a little odd, but let's read it. Very minor spoilers in this review for the most part, but before I start, my recommendation is to go into this completely spoiler-free. Don't listen to any of the nonsense about political agendas or the like, as they're not being written by anyone who's seen the show. Well, let me stop there and say that if you're reading this review, you're already on IMDb, you've already been clicking things, you've clicked a few pages of things, you've seen spoilers already. I think we're way too late for that, don't you think? To avoid spoilers nowadays, you have to pretty much just not go online. Don't go and visit YouTube. Don't visit IMDb. Don't visit Rotten Tomatoes. Don't do anything online if you're worried about spoilers, because there is no way to... This reviewer should know better than this. If you've clicked here, I went to IMDb and I've already gone down to the bottom page of IMDb. And I've gone and clicked on, I've clicked on the actual see all audience reviews, and I've scrolled down a little bit. Now, if you think I can do all that without getting any spoilers, really, with all the ads that pop up and the promotional material and stuff, you get out of here. Come on now. But I'll continue to read on. It's not a super dark take on the future that the Children of Mars short leads some to believe. Think of that short as a Wolf 359 or a Dominion War moment that is many years in this show's past, that informs what happens but doesn't define it. That out of the way, I was privileged to see a pre-screen of the first 3 episodes, and this is definitely the Picard you remember. Granted, he's now 94 years old. He's long retired, going out on a new adventure for the first time in a decade plus, but it's still Jean-Luc Picard at his core. Okay, I'm not going to review. I shouldn't read more than 1 or 2 paragraphs. In fact, I shouldn't need to read more than 1 paragraph of a review to get the idea of what's going on, so I'm going to move on. 10 out of 10, overly exceeded expectations. I just finished watching the first episode world premiere, and I must say, after being extremely skeptical, it was very, very good. The writing is excellent. Patrick Stewart's acting kept the show feeling very high quality, alive, and full of captivation. Picard continuously compliments the young actors and actresses with his charm, emotion. Okay, so Patrick Stewart performed in an awesome manner. He usually does, right? I mean, even in bad movies, nobody says he's the problem most all of the time. I remember one movie he was bad, but that was many, many, many years ago for me. I would say 90% of the time plus. Any material that Patrick Stewart's in, he does a good job, or at least an acceptable job, right? 8 out of 10, it's good. IMDB needs to step up and not allow reviews until the date has passed, official airing date. Half the reviews here are from idiots that haven't even watched it yet, have an opinion. Well, yeah, that's a problem on everything nowadays. People are so bound up in their beliefs on things that they've never even seen a show, so they're already leaving reviews when they can somehow do so, and they're praising the show or bombing it, review bombing it with bad ratings, and yet they've never seen the thing. They're just doing that based on other material out there, other opinion. So they're making a good point there, but this reviewer says, anyways, the show is great. Watch the first episode, and Stewart delivers on all counts as always. Can't wait for more pit bull scenes too. Okay. Yeah, the dog factors in this, I guess. Picard's got a dog with him. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. We'll see. I mean, I remember they did this before, certainly, right? I mean, we saw, what was it, Captain Archer in Enterprise. I didn't really care for that show. A lot of people didn't. It didn't really get interesting for me until the last few episodes of the final season when it had already been canceled. As ironic as that is, that's the way it felt to me. Most of it was like not that impressive. But Captain Archer on that show, he had a dog that was actually on the ship with him, a beagle, I believe it was, and it even was brought up as a joke, a throwaway joke in the 2009 Star Trek by J.J. Abrams. I don't know if it's good or bad. It could work if it was done right, but you know, it could also be stupid and be comic relief. So I'm neither here or there on judging the show based on whether it has a dog. If the dog is a side character, I don't know. 9 out of 10, a fine start to a promising story. I won't write any spoilers, just a few words of opinion. The first episode of Picard is filmed beautifully and thoughtfully, the story engaging and captivating, the writing subtle, the characters considered, and the acting fine. Okay. Watch this, let yourself be absorbed in this new vision of Trek. Well, they did say new vision, so maybe they're saying this isn't what we had before with this character, but just a hint there. 10 out of 10. This is so good, finally they got it right. So which part was wrong before? Let's find out. I'm giving the show a 10 out of 10. From the start on, you know now they put in a lot of work. After seeing the first episodes, I can say there is a good storyline and that Picard is older. He has still got it. He gets involved in another mission, a mystery, and he wants answers. And there is the fire in Picard we all know. I can honestly say that my Trekkie heart is full of joy after watching this. Okay, but they didn't really tell us like what was wrong before, but they did say they finally got it right. Are they saying that Star Trek Discovery was wrong, or are they saying that other stuff or everything else was wrong? I just don't know. 6 out of 10, better than Discovery. Okay. So far, The good, really great acting, excellent production values, and enjoyable, slow, dramatic pacing at times, characters and world you know. The bad, action movie mentality, moral themes that lack nuance, really silly action sequences, odd pacing issues, lens flare, and a general lack of thoughtfulness in the plot journey. There's a thinky, morally complex puzzle solving vibe to old Star Trek that is completely absent in the pilot. So they're saying, yeah, it's more like the 2009 Star Trek. That is the origin of the story, basically. It's got lens flares. Well, that's certainly like the 2009 film. So, yeah, that's not exactly like the Star Trek that we remember. 9 out of 10, satisfying, but it's not your standard Trek narrative. Long-form storytelling isn't new to Star Trek, but many of the most enduring and memorable episodes are one-offs. Picard is more of a novel than a short story, and I'm eager to see how it plays out. There's a lot to love here, including the various newcomers. The show looks fantastic, and Sir Pat is in fine form. So they're saying that basically this 10-episode season, is it 10 episodes? If it is, they're saying that the whole thing is going to be one story that's concluded, that we travel through, I guess, and it's not going to be like the Next Generation where you had one or two, you had like one main plot and a subplot, and both were wrapped up at the end of each episode. And that's not what you're going to get here. You're going to get one overstretched story throughout here. That could work, I guess, but that might rub some people the wrong way that we're expecting, a return to the Next Generation, but that's definitely not what they're doing here. 10 out of 10, why oh why? Don't know why people are reviewing this when it hasn't been aired and writing load of rubbish. Well, that's not a review. They're saying that they're mad that people are reviewing this before it aired. But actually, no, people are already saying that they've seen the first 3 episodes at in different countries and different places as some kind of promotion or some kind of viewings for the press. No, I don't think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing people that are saying, hey, they saw the first 3 episodes that were shown to them by somebody from CBS, I would imagine. 8 out of 10, off to a very intriguing start. More, please. Forget anything negative you may have heard. This is a very, very good, and it's definitely a continuation of The Next Generation. Not a direct sequel, but a new chapter in Picard's story with so many tendrils from the series, and in particular, Star Trek Nemesis. So they're saying that this actually accounts for the stuff in Nemesis somehow. That's interesting because Star Trek Nemesis features like a Romulan plot where the Romulans are going through like a coup, and it involves a cloned twin of Picard. I haven't heard anybody say that factors into this, but let's read on. Yes, Stewart is nearly 80, but his Picard is nearly 90, and he plays it that way. 24th century medicine does allow for a more active elderly populace. That said, he's not running any marathons. Well, see, I brought that up earlier. That's a big problem, really, in the logic of this. If you think about it, we're centuries in the future, yet a 90-year-old is still pretty much a 90-year-old. That doesn't ring true to me. It really doesn't. But anyway, let's read on. The filming, locations, technology, and effects are all perfect. The right side of futuristic believability. It's not woke. It has no agenda other than to tell a story, a mystery, and draw you in. And I'll be honest, 1 episode in and I'm hooked. So that's somebody very much aware that online people are saying that Star Trek is becoming woke, and they're trying to maybe this whole critique is, you see, that's the problem. Once somebody starts mentioning a political angle to this, I don't know if they're trying to counteract that more than they are trying to put an honest review. But they're saying 8 out of 10 regardless. So let's move on. 8 out of 10, a good start. That's a repeat. 3 out of 10, okay. Breaks my heart to give such a bad rating. Okay, this is quite a turn. There are many moments in life when you realize that something has changed. Maybe the environment changed, you changed, or just simply grown out of it. I really can't tell what it is that destructs me so much on that new Picard series. Maybe it is the really bad Alex Kurtzman script writing, the Jar Jar Abrams-esque directing, or the simple fact that Star Trek Picard is becoming a Game of Thrones kind of game. Every scene is drastically painted in an overdramatic manner. Every scene wants to be overwhelming, wants to get the audience emotionally, just wants to be too much of everything. But foremost, it wants to change the character of a rational, thinking, brilliant Starfleet captain, admiral, into an emotional, acting, tattering old man, totally ignoring a lifetime of responsible serving as a captain and an admiral. So this person's not only he doesn't like J.J. Abrams' take on Star Trek, and he doesn't like Alex Kurtzman at all, and he also doesn't like this version of Picard. So yeah, that is definitely, something I'm hearing online, and here it shows up 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10, Picard isn't about Picard. Of course, in 2020, Picard can't be about Picard. Instead, it has to be about a strong, man-beating superhero woman, just like pretty much everything else that's out right now. It would have been mediocre at best if episode 1 was self-contained, but having now seen the ending, it's apparent this is going to be a thing for the foreseeable future. Is this all Hollywood knows how to do now? Yes, the answer is yes. So, again, much like the previous reviewer, they don't like where this is going, and they don't like the fact that there's this superpowered girl character that we've heard about before in some reviews. That's very much front and center. They don't like that. 10 out of 10, warm and stuff. I think they may do a really good job with this series. I hate Discovery, but this one is canon. Patrick at his best. And you're going to get all warm inside when you find out who and why that girl we've seen in previews is actually in there. Give this show a chance if on the fence, which I know you're not. You're going to watch it. It was really enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to seeing episode 2. Like others have said, this is going to be like a 10-hour movie, but I think it will conclude what happened after Nemesis. Again, they're mentioning Nemesis, but nobody like that has actually spoiled plot points for me has mentioned anything about Nemesis other than Nemesis was the last time we saw Picard. So anyway, 2 out of 10. Star Trek Brexit. Uh-oh. Warning, spoilers for everybody. Not that I haven't spoiled things enough already. I have seen the first 3. It's a melodrama. Sir Patrick's age really shows, and the plot is predictable. I would rather have remembered him as his iconic role. Stylistically, it's identical to Discovery, which isn't my cup of decaf Earl Grey. Shame, I thought I was the target audience. Unfortunately, it still isn't Star Trek. It appears to be Patrick's dislike with governments and his age. It appears that he voted for the losing Brexit side. He is struggling to put morality back into a protectionist federation. I can't see how this will do anything other than lose half of the fandom in one fell swoop. It's not a vague or an allegory, it's blatant and forced. Unfortunately, these aren't the characters we know and love. The Federation is dark and uninspiring. There are re-canon violations galore, and quite frankly, I'm not prepared to sit through a season to see if these hacks built them back up again. Now that I have seen old Patrick acting, I unfortunately cannot unsee. He's quite frail and a little shaky. I feel sorry for his character, but not inspired. Wow, so this is definitely a political angle. We're talking about Brexit, but then again, Patrick Stewart brought Brexit into this when he had that interview, at least one interview, where he brought up Trump and Brexit and said he definitely, deliberately wanted to bring that into the show. That's what he said in his own interview. So whether he did or not, and whether that works for people or not, he definitely put that out there. And so you can't say that it's just YouTubers that brought that up. They didn't bring that up until Patrick Stewart actually introduced that himself. And so this could be a form of marketing to get controversy for the show, or it might be a complete fail. Maybe Patrick Stewart just messed up and he started talking politics. But obviously, this reviewer has seen that interview and he's bringing that politics right back into the interview. 8 out of 10, engage. He is really back in a new but still well-known manner. Time has passed and both characters and systems have changed or adapted, some to the good, some to the bad. Even or especially Star Trek should deal with this. I personally found the first episodes refreshing, and I'm curious for the outcome of this, not just to connect some loose ends. It's a pity that many people focus on some personal aspects of the crew/cast within their reviews. So this reviewer saying he doesn't like that another reviewer brought up Brexit, for example. But Patrick Stewart brought this up. Marketing's not something that nobody knows about. All of these production teams, all of these studios, CBS certainly, Viacom, they know exactly what they're doing when they market things, when they have their actors and actresses do interviews. So they definitely wanted Patrick Stewart to go out there and talk about Brexit and Trump. They knew what they were doing, so they invited people to come in and talk about this stuff. They really did. 10 out of 10, we don't know. Okay, just had to point out to review a show, film, or any work of art based on one's perception of the politics of the actors is dumb and not really a review. Yeah, but then why did this production, why did this show, why did CBS bring this up? They knew what they were doing. Come on. Such nastiness and prejudice. But as they say, the fish rots from the head down, and we all know the worship of meanness and ignorance that pervades so many. Well, this isn't a review. They're saying 10 out of 10, but they're just commenting that they don't think it's fair that reviewers are going to bring up politics. But CBS brought up the politics, didn't they? They really did. 10 out of 10, wow, watch it. Having watched TNG over and over and over the past 20 years, I'm really happy with this. Okay. 7 out of 10, this has potential. I'm a huge old Trek fan. TNG will always be the greatest, followed by Deep Space Nine. I actually enjoyed Picard. You can tell real work went into this. I was expecting minimal service. Patrick Stewart handles the role with aplomb. Give him some credit. Very few actors work into his age. That is true, actually. He does very well for his age. The plot was fairly interesting. There are subtle references to various Trek themes. As other reviewers have mentioned, there are clearly some kinks which can be worked out, and I encourage them to do so. Some artistic license is showcased, particularly with regard to the CGI scenes. Good luck to all the producers of the show. Looking forward to seeing more. So they're not saying it's the most fantastic thing, but they're saying it has potential, and he's an old-time fan. Okay. 9 out of 10, great new beginning for Picard. Someone wrote, what were they thinking because Patrick Stewart will be 80 this year? Well, he still has the Picard character and now even more so fully. I thought he was brilliant. Okay. Good but not perfect, 8 out of 10. Having just finished the first episode, I can say that I enjoyed it. There were no what the fuck moments as occurred with the first episode of Discovery. It was great to see Patrick Stewart return to the role of Jean-Luc Picard. So they really didn't like where Discovery went and they found this a lot better. Okay. 3 out of 10. These 10 out of 10 reviews are not genuine. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Here we go. I think they have people writing these reviews. They are all worded basically the same. They use the same wording, same points. They have caught on to the review bombing and are trying to get ahead of it. Why put so much effort into controlling the narrative instead of writing a decent one? Agenda. I don't think so. From what I've been reading, these are all real reviews. Even if they weren't, what about all the people talking it down and saying it's 1 out of 10 and 2 out of 10 that probably haven't seen it? Like I've said before, the reason I keep going back to Rotten Tomatoes, even though it's got problems, obviously, is because for all the fake positive reviews, people that didn't watch it for whatever reason that wanted to talk it up, you have people doing the same thing in the opposite direction. And overall, given the sheer number of reviews, you still get a pretty accurate critique of what's going on with a film. And I've found that to be the case. And I have no reason to believe IMDb is any less on this topic. I think that for every review that comes in that's fake in some way and talks it up, another fake one comes in, basically just as relevant, it's fake, and talks it down. So overall, I think we still get a pretty accurate view of what's going on, conspiracy theory or not. Now, agenda, yes. Agenda, that's fair to say there's an agenda in Star Trek Picard because, like I said, CBS has allowed the actor the actor of Patrick Stewart to talk about politics in straight up marketing for this material. So that's not an accident. They don't allow people to do this. They have contracts. Contracts say certain things about what you're expected to do, promoting and talking about your role in a film or in a TV show. This is all very tightly, legally worked out. It has been decades ago. So to think that somebody like Patrick Stewart's going to come out and talk about Trump and Brexit in all these much hyped and spread around interviews. And this is not somehow agreed upon with CBS and etc. I'm sorry, you're crazy if you think this isn't part of what they wanted. They definitely wanted this. And sometimes it backfires spectacularly on them. But maybe sometimes it doesn't. And so it's obvious they wanted people to talk about the politics for better or worse. And here we are. Um, 10 out of 10. Sad. Bashing a show that has not even aired. Sad. It's great to see Picard back, even the show ends up not being that great. Well, see, they're calling people sad that bashed this supposedly without seeing it, but then they're admitting here that they haven't seen it either, but they're giving it 10 out of 10. So again, like I said, for every person like calling the movie 10 out of 10 that hasn't seen it, there's just as many calling it 1 out of 10 that haven't seen it. And so it balances out in the end. And this person's just made my point for me. 9 out of 10, way better than I expected. In these days where returns, reboots, and long-standing shows all seem to be going down the chute, Picard does the reverse. I watched a few episodes and totally enjoyed them. This has been a huge surprise. What do you mean you watched a few episodes? You saw 3 episodes? They're not saying how they saw the first 3 or that it was the first 3, but they said, I watched a few episodes. They're making it sound like they reviewed this from some position far in the future where multiple episodes have been released. So I shouldn't read the rest of that. I'm not sure about that. 10 out of 10, amazingly brilliant. This new Star Trek is all that I knew it could be with all the improved special effects and showing Earth in the 24th century. Was curious how they would detail transporters on the ground and all the Golden Gate Bridge lined with solar panels. Since we obviously don't need roads anymore, I just wish the season had 26 episodes and not a pitiful 10. As long as the show airs at the same time every week without bogus interruptions. Well, you know, I will agree with one thing. I kind of prefer the days where we had 25 and 26 episode seasons. I just do, and I know, I guess we're not going to get that again, and that's not what's going to happen, and we're just going to be left with 10 and 12 episode seasons, and now we're into 8 episode seasons on a lot of popular shows, and I don't like it at all. I don't agree with it, but I'm going to have to say that that's the way it's going to be from now on. But going back to our score here, this is an early look, a really early look, like I said. Only like a small number of people in the US have probably seen this at this point. And I might come back to this if something goes on with this audience score. If something weird happens here, I'll be back to talk about it. And I will see you again. Although this is not a Rotten Review, I will see you on another episode of Rotten Reviews.